When Disney's One Saturday Morning launched in September of 1997, it was headlined by 3 animated shows: Recess, Doug, and Pepper Ann. That third show does not seem to get brought up as much as its siblings, but in many ways it has held up the strongest by tackling topics that proved to be ahead of their time. Sue Rose originally developed Pepper Ann for a comic strip, and eventually got the chance to pitch a show to Nickelodeon. Nick ultimately passed, but Rose was then able to bring the show over to Disney, who was keen on producing their own slate of original cartoons for ABC's Saturday morning block. As a result, she also became the first woman to create a Disney animated series. Thus, Pepper Ann leapt onto the screen. At first glance, Pepper Ann seems like any other slice-of-life cartoon about a 12-year-old girl dealing with the world around her. We see her trying to get by at school, hanging out with her best friends, and avoiding a parent's embarrassment. However, what allowed Pepper Ann to become a cut above the rest was what the episodes ultimately taught. Rose and her team wanted the issues tackled on the show to rise above those of after-school specials, and actually talked to and interviewed young girls to understand what their actual concerns and worries were. An educational consultant from an all-girls school was even employed to help guide the writers. The mostly female characters, and even the males too, don't succumb to the usual stereotypes commonly associated with girls at the time. Pepper Ann herself is portrayed as being very athletic, rollerblades to school, and has a real knack for video games. She is also depicted as wanting to grow up to be a scientist with aspirations of winning the Nobel Prize. Other shows would make this her one defining personality, but it is instead used to showcase another aspect that helps define the character. Most episodes don't even bring her scientific career goals up. Meanwhile, her friend Milo is shown as preferring what are considered more feminine activities and rejecting male stereotypes, and the show depicts that as okay too. Then there is Pepper Ann's relationship with her sister Moose. Most shows typically like to throw in a sibling rivalry component to create a conflict of some kind, but this show actually shows them being supportive of one another and interested in the other's well-being. I also have to praise the characterization of their mother Lydia, who April Winchell does a wonderful job of voicing. The show was not afraid of tackling the troubles that might befall a single divorced mother, including her attempting to get back into the dating game and dealing with Pepper Ann's preteen anxieties. Winchell somehow finds the perfect delivery for every line, properly showing Lydia's frustrations as well as her nurturing and funny sides. Revisiting the series, I was also struck by the topics the Pepper Ann writers decide to touch on. These are topics we're accustomed to hearing about nowadays, but not so much in Saturday morning cartoons in the 90s, and it's a credit to Rose and the writers that they never came across as preachy or shoving lessons down our throat. One notable example involves the character of Moose. Moose's gender fluidity leads to other characters being uncertain whether she is a boy or a girl, but she's just content being herself, skateboarding, and reading Tundra Woman comic books. In one excellent episode, Pepper Ann gets frequently annoyed at other people calling her a boy and tries to make Moose appear more stereotypically girly, much to her chagrin. The way this episode tackles gender norms and stereotypes was extremely ahead of its time, and I wonder if the writers had access to a crystal ball that showed how these subjects would be major discussion points in the 2010s. In another episode, Pepper Ann finds out she has a tiny bit of Native American ancestry, which leads to her wearing headdresses, putting up teepees in the backyard, and other things she just learned about on television without doing the proper research. Again, cultural appropriation is often brought up now when people try to adopt aspects of other people's heritage for themselves. But in the 90s, not so much. Then there's another episode where Pepper Ann joins her school football team and worries she's losing her femininity, resulting in her taking lessons to appear more womanly, leading to a theme about not worrying about others trying to box you in based on gender. These sorts of ahead-of-their-time messages did not just revolve around Pepper Ann either. In one episode, Lydia quits her job and has trouble finding another one in the current market, where she's either overqualified or underqualified. And you thought that was just a millennial problem. The series did touch on more general subjects too. In the episode A Kosher Christmas, we see Pepper Ann coping with celebrating both her divorced parents' holidays and finding she loves being with her father on Christmas and her mother during Hanukkah. This also marked a rare Disney production where the lead protagonist was Jewish, and the writers handled her faith in a respectful way. Another excellent episode features Pepper Ann becoming the movie critic for her school newspaper, where she mostly just insults the filmmakers and their work. When a director dares her to try her own hand at making a movie, she learns that all movies are the result of an enormous amount of effort and hard work, regardless of what the final product ends up being. I feel this is an episode that should be required viewing for anyone who dabbles in film criticism, especially in this day and age when the internet has given everyone a mouthpiece, and some people seem to confuse insults with criticism. One of the most infamous episodes is one that Disney has rarely rerun, and it's impressive they even approved its production to begin with. Pepper Ann is told she needs support for gym class, and interprets it as meaning she needs a bra. You heard that right, this aired on Disney's One Saturday Morning. The rest of the episode is then littered with double entendres, and I think it's a credit to Sue Rose and the show's consultants that these ended up being funny rather than crass. At this point, I'm probably making Pepper Ann sound like an issue show, but it really was funny. The writers got a lot of mileage out of the various fantasies going on in Pepper Ann's head, and whenever she spoke to her reflection. The various characters appearing throughout the series all had distinct personalities that worked well in contrast to the title star. Whether it was the appropriately named Pink-Eyed Pete, or the gossipy twins Tessa and Vanessa, or the school's elderly secretary Vera, the showrunners were able to flesh out the citizens of Hazelnut. Seeing how far Pepper Ann would go with her plans also added to the hilarity of the show. In one episode, she creates a business out of Milo's lawn mowing talent and becomes like an overly controlling mafioso type as a result. In another episode, she finds herself at a Renaissance fair and escapes so much into the world she proceeds to only dress and talk like a medieval maiden. Pepper Ann even managed to take typical episode plot lines like a Freaky Friday story, a Christmas Carol variation, and the musical episode and bring some original ideas to the table. A lot of the credit for what makes Pepper Ann such a fantastic character also goes to Kathleen Wilhoit, who did her voice. Her voice was such a match for the character, and even something as simple as a yell or a scream, Wilhoit could take and make 10 times funnier.
But Mom, I really want to be... Aha! Remember our talk about fiber?
Meanwhile, Pamela Adlon, yes, the voice of Spinelli on Recess, was responsible for Moose's gravely sounding voice and brought a lot of laughs through her deadpan delivery. And who can forget legendary comic actor Don Adams as the voice of the school principal, frequently putting up with Pepper Ann's shenanigans. Revisiting Pepper Ann, this was not just a childhood show that happened to hold up. It made me further appreciate the writing and how the series managed to tackle subject matter and themes almost unheard of on children's television, and that Disney gave Sue Rose and the writers the freedom to devote episodes to these themes really speaks to the creative environment going on, when they started to expand their animated television output beyond movie spin-offs and revivals of classic characters. I think Pepper Ann is the crown jewel of the One Saturday Morning block, featuring a lead protagonist children of any generation can relate to, and maybe some adults too. They really captured the anxiety and worries of that age, and they tried to avoid using cliches so often seen in other shows about preteens. The show was funny, and while made in the late 90s, it feels like it could have been made today. That's a testament to the showrunners wanting to respect their audience rather than talk down to them. I recommend going back to Pepper Ann, because you may be pleasantly surprised at what it has to say. See you next time.